Hello everyone. We're doing the live masterclass here, lesson number 4 for the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge. So glad you're here. Now this is going to be a little different than the usual lesson. I have my iPhone recording this, and right now it's actually kind of swinging just a little bit. I have it precariously being held up by wire. I hope to get a more proper way to hold it up in the future. Some sort of I don't know, tripod or something like that suspended from the ceiling. But anyway, glad you're here. Hope you can see me okay. I'm excited to be able to teach you the next steps here in painting this portrait that we're doing in the group. And man, isn't everybody doing an awesome job? I mean, you see all these sketches and everything. It's just fantastic. The amount of talent in the group, just the effort you guys have been putting in. Just want to give you guys a round of applause for that, because you are really doing a fantastic job. This is a difficult season of life, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy in the midst of this pandemic. And I'm praying for you guys that you are staying healthy. So let me do this. Let me just open up this class here with a word of prayer. That's what I do in my normal studio practice, because I know I can't paint without God's help. He's the master artist. And without his help, I really can't do my very best work. So I want to pray for you and pray for me that we would have a great time in this class, and together we would learn how to paint a portrait we can be proud of. So let's pray. Father, I ask a blessing on this class right now. In the name of Jesus, Lord, you know I need your help. You know that apart from you I can do nothing. But thank you, Lord, that you've given me a talent. You've given these students a talent. And Lord, in the middle of this pandemic, in the middle of this trying time, Lord, thank you that you are in control. You're helping people. You're rescuing them. You're keeping them safe. And others that are sick, Lord, we believe you'll heal them. But Lord, bless this class. I pray you'd help me to be able to teach these techniques here, that we could paint an awesome portrait, something we would be proud to hang up on our wall, something we'd be proud to say, I did this. And then it would just carry on into future paintings, Lord, that some artists would dive into portrait painting as a career, commission portrait painting. Others would dive into painting portraits of their loved ones, maybe doing all of their grandkids, and they'd be able to give them as fantastic gifts. So Lord, bless this time in the name of Jesus, and we thank you. Amen. All right, so I can't see your comments. I'm trying to get them to pop up on my screen, but I haven't figured out how to do that, so unfortunately, I can't see what's going on. But I'm going to really quick just hit the record button on my camcorder just to make sure that if something happens here in the technology part of this lesson, I'm going to be able to catch it. So, all right, and we got a few people online, Patty and Nettie. Good to see you. I'm not going to scroll through the names of the people right now and say hello like I usually do, because I don't want this camera here to start shaking. It's going to make you seasick, and I don't want to do that to you. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to do a demonstration here for about a half an hour and just show you the next steps. It's not going to be as clear cut as my videos have been. What I mean is it's not going to be structured as tight where I have step 1, step 2, step 3. Rather, this is just going to kind of flow with my studio process, how I paint. And then I do have this recording as well. Just want to double check that, because I don't have an assistant at this point, but that might change. Anyway, so I'm gonna paint for about a half an hour, show you the next steps here in getting your portrait looking more realistic. We want to develop the values and the color. Right now at this point, we only have one layer on here, okay? But anyway, before I forget and lose my train of thought, so 30 minutes or so of demonstration, then 30 minutes of questions and answers. So about 2:30-ish, maybe 2:40, I'll do some questions and answers, and then we'll finish up at the top of the hour at about 3 o'clock. Does that sound good? All right, so again, like I was saying, this is where we left off in the last step. So we had just basically an ultramarine blue glaze. An ultramarine blue glaze, very, very light on here. We sealed in the sketch, we put a toning layer or a ground on it, and kind of muted the sketch so that it's not as stark in contrast. It's easier to cover with paint. And we put on that light blue glaze. And I've seen in the group some of the comments, some of you have struggled with that initial glaze. And I just want to let you know that there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. I mean, this is a fantastic technique, but it does, like anything, it takes a little bit to learn. You know, just like when you learn to drive a car, you take it for granted now how easily you can do it. But you remember when you started, just the challenge of just getting the vehicle to stay straight on the road. It's kind of similar with this. Now, some of you are going to get this a little faster than others, and that's just how it is in life with anything new we learn. So just keep that in mind. If you went a little bit too dark with the glaze, it's not the end of the world. You can correct it. It's just a matter of adding more and more layers, because right now with how light you started, you have a long ways to go before you get, like for example, this hat to the tonal value that it is in the reference photo. Okay, it has so far to go that if you have streaks and things like that, you'll be able to cover it up. When you get more and more layers on there and you apply them in different directions, that's going to smooth everything out. So just relax. It's you guys are doing fantastic. Some of you have went very light, and that's awesome. That's how we should do it. And I would encourage you to go lighter than what you think. When you're painting, if you feel like you're just barely making a difference, like, man, I can't quite tell what I did, you're on the right track. Now, like I mentioned in my blog post, you know, where I have the videos located at, as you add more and more layers, you're going to build up momentum, and you're going to end up getting darker and darker with those layers. So they're going to get more opaque is what I'm trying to say. So don't worry about it. Just relax, have fun, and just roll with it. It's going to work out. All right, so I'm going to start with my 3/4 inch flat, and what I want to do is put on another layer that counteracts or complements this blue. So remember, I told you you can use blue for bluish colors, and you can also use it for darker values, because that blue glaze optically, when we mix it with something like raw umber dark, that's going to make a gray, and eventually if you add enough of those layers, it's going to make a black. Now, we don't want to just use straight black, because this hat isn't straight black. There's other values, there's other tones in there we want to capture, plus we want to capture the depth of it as well. And the glazing technique gives you that ability to really add richness and depth and make your acrylic painting so much like an oil painting. All right, so what I want to do is add this complementary glaze. So it's going to be brown, because we're going to basically get the overall sense of his skin tones. And I want to quickly choose. Now you can see my palette here. Again, we have raw umber dark, burnt sienna, raw sienna, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, organic red orange or pyrrole orange, and you can use cadmium red for that. Indian yellow, which you could use probably a cadmium orange or cadmium yellow for that, and titanium white. And again, those colors are all going to be in your welcome kit. So if you haven't registered, I think if you're on the Facebook group, you've registered by now, but if you haven't, go to realisticacrylic.com, and at the top of the website, you'll see that bar, and it says Take the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge, learn more. Click that and you'll download everything, the supplies list, the palette layout sheet, and then the reference photos, so you can paint along with us. So, all right, without further ado, we're going to finally dive into the painting. I'm taking a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, that's going to be my base. Burnt sienna right here. You can see that on the palette. I have to lift this up high so you guys can see this. And what I do is I wipe it off on the palette away from the matte medium. That way I can control how much of this pigment is getting into the glaze. This is very important. So if you want to make that light glaze, this is the way to do it. You just grab a little bit on the corner of your brush, you wipe it off, and then you start to work it back in to the medium, and you kind of bridge the gap between your pigment and then the medium, all right? And that way you can really control the mixture. You don't want to mix it into the whole thing, just mix it into a tiny corner and pull from your dollop of matte medium into this mixing area. I'm just going to check really quick on my iPhone and make sure everything's still recording. Fantastic. All right. And if you guys like what you're seeing so far, give me a thumbs up, give me an emoji, let me know you're seeing it okay, everything's coming out clearly. I appreciate that, all right? All right, so now we have this glaze, and I think I'm also going to add just a bit of raw umber dark, okay? So 2 colors right now, burnt sienna and raw umber dark, okay? And if you don't have raw umber dark, just use raw umber, that'll be okay at this stage. It doesn't have to be quite as dark. Raw umber dark is just like raw umber. It's just a little more concentrated, just a little darker in value. I'm going to mix those 2 together and see what we have. And I'm just going to apply it to the left corner. I like to start in that left corner, work my way out. Now notice I'm cutting up right along the ear. I'm using a very firm stroke with a decent amount of pressure. I'm going to cut up around the hair. I'm not going to paint on top of the hair because that's kind of grayish white. Okay, we want to establish some contrast between those areas right off the bat. Always keep that wet edge. Now notice my brush strokes going horizontally, all right? You want to really smooth it out. Keep that wet edge. You can see how smooth it is, and that's the way to do it. Now we're going to dip into the medium again. Reload the brush, continue where we left off, cut up along the edge of the shadow, work our way across to the right, flip the brush over to get the medium that's on the other side. You're always flipping that brush over because you exhaust the supply on one side of the brush and then you're going to flip over to the other side. All right? Now I'm going to put some good pressure here to really get this edge established between the hat and the shadow area of his face. I'm going to dip again. Now I'm going to cut up right along the edge of the collar of his shirt. And it should just flow off your brush. Go in opposite directions. We started with the stroke following the direction of his neck, of the collar. Okay, this kind of angle like this. Now we're coming up going the other way with directions in the exact opposite direction. So brush strokes in the exact opposite direction. Now, I'm kind of exhausting the area. I'm going to mix a little more. I'm going to pull from this raw umber dark and burnt sienna right here. Add a little more matte medium. And now I'm going to finish by cutting up along the edge of this shadow. This is why your sketching was so important, because now you know exactly where to place those layers. It makes a big difference. Okay, I have a little more pigment on this glaze than the first. That's okay, I can just blend it right in, all right? Blend it right in. And I tell you what, because there's this kind of cool area, there's that little cool area where his shirt is reflecting onto his neck, I'm just going to wipe away. I probably should have just left that alone and not brushed up to it, but that's no big deal. Just grab a rag. So you're going to want to have a damp rag that you can just use to wipe things away when you need to. It's kind of like an eraser, only a lot bigger, all right? And why am I wiping that away? The reason I'm wiping that away is because the color, first of all, the value's a little bit lighter, but also the color is cooler, all right? So this is really reflecting that white light, the light's coming from the right-hand side, the sunlight, reflecting off of his very bright white shirt and reflecting right onto his jowls and his chin. And the color temperature is a little bit cooler because his shirt is white, okay? So I'm just trying to capture that. Now I'm going to dip my brush into the glaze again, and I'm just going to add that in. By the way, guys, if you have any questions as I'm working on this, put them in the chat right now. Put them on the sidebar where you can type in. Type in your questions right now while they're top of mind. And then at the questions and answers portion here in the lesson, I'll be able to go down the line and answer all of your questions for you. All right, so that's how we'll do it. All right, so I just want to double check, make sure I have everything, and you have to make sure it's not starting to dry. If it's starting to set up and dry, it's just better to leave it alone. You don't want to overwork it. I just want to finish this glaze. Because I'm kind of talking and explaining everything, I sometimes leave off in a couple of areas, you know, so I have to come back and just make sure I got everything. All right. So what sometimes will happen is if you get to the end of the supply of the matte medium on your brush, the mixture, the glaze you made, the little bit of pigment that's on the end of the bristles, that little bit of pigment will start to come out, and your glaze is going to end up getting darker because you're not pulling from the matte medium, you're pulling from that little bit of pigment, the direct pigment that you put on your brush when you started mixing your glaze, that little bit on the corner. So don't be scared by that, just kind of dab it with your finger, and it's not a big deal. Okay, I'm gonna get a quick sip of water here, and we'll resume. Okay, I still need to get a couple other areas in the face. I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to switch brushes and go with this, what is this? I think a 1/2 inch flat right here. Okay, and I want to just press the bristles together. I had it damp, so they were kind of splayed apart. I want to get them nice and flat and together. Okay, I want to get this shadow under his nose quick. So let's take that same glaze, burnt sienna, raw umber dark, and matte medium. Can you guys see that? There we go. Should be able to see it now. Unless I'm lifting this palette like almost at the level of my head. All right. Now, so you just want to block that in right under his nose. And again, as you look at this, you're probably thinking, Matt, this looks so light, like you're hardly making a dent on this painting. And again, I would just urge you, just go lighter than you think, because right now you're making decisions. You're establishing a foundation, a roadmap for your painting to follow later on. You know, it's just like roads, you know, you have these super highways right now, you've got motorways, interstates, whatever you call them, wherever you live. And at one time, 100 years ago, 120 years ago, they were just cow paths. You know, they were just cow paths, little trails that people made, and they took their cart over it, their horse-drawn cart or their oxen-drawn cart. And then pretty soon, when automobiles came out, they decided to put down gravel, and then it became a gravel road. And then over time, they decided, let's add pavement, and then pretty soon more cars started traveling on it. And eventually it became a thoroughfare, and they turned it into a double-lane interstate. So the metaphor here is that you're starting off very lightly. And it's much easier to build a road on top of a road that's already there. You know, if they had to put that interstate into fresh land, they had to, you know, level out the land, cut down trees, ask people to move their homes out of the way. It's a lot harder, right? So in the same way, when we're starting off, you're going super light so that it's so much easier than down the road you don't have to fix mistakes. So I hope that makes sense, the reason why we're going very light. And I think sometimes it's good to know the reason why we do things, because then it helps you to learn and remember, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Okay, I'm gonna add the same glaze again, burnt sienna right there, raw umber dark right there, a little more matte medium. See how I'm controlling this mixture just by having a little bit on the brush and pulling away from the dollop of matte medium I have here. I'm going to add a little shadow right here, and I'm going to use brush strokes going in this direction, okay, across the angle. So the angle's going this way, I'm going to put the brush strokes going in the opposite way. That's going to help it to be smoother and less streaky, okay. I want that to be really, really light. And I'll have to come back in with some warmer glazes down the road, but that'll work for right now. Okay, and I'm going to step back here and see what else I can do. this needs to be done as well, down here by his neck. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, I think you can. And I guess I don't have to lift my palette up quite so high because you can see it all at that level. Just testing here, guys, just making sure you can see everything that's going on. A little bit different when you're doing it live, but it's fun because I want to have a chance to answer your questions directly. And I think this is kind of a nice way to go for some of the lessons. All right, so that same glaze, and I'm just basically getting this value established for the area on his neck. So our goal in the painting with this technique is just to build up contrast, all right? Find the areas of contrast in your painting or in your reference photo. So you want to really study your reference photo. Don't just paint what you think you see. Make sure you're looking at your reference photo and painting exactly what you see. You always want to be referring to that reference photo. So we're establishing color and value simultaneously. All right, so we're getting some contrast between the white value of his shirt and the darker value of his skin tones here in shadow. Now notice I didn't add anything to the high lit portion of his face. You know, a lot of artists want to dive in with those skin tones, and you know, I know, you know, we all want to get those skin tones accurate, but skin tones are really a small portion of painting a successful portrait. They're way down the list. It's like, again, building a house. Get the foundation in place, get the joists in place, put up the structure, you know, start putting up maybe the side walls and the siding, and then you get to the interior, you start putting in, you know, plumbing and electrical. Finally, you finish up with drywall and cabinetry and all that kind of stuff. So skin tones comes later down the line. You don't want to jump the boat and think, oh, I've got to get those skin tones in right now, because what'll happen if you do that is you'll miss the step that came before it, which is locking in your values, okay? Values are way more important than skin tones. So I don't care at this point what the color is on the highlight portion of his face. I'll get to that, but that's going to come later. That's going to come much later in the painting. Right now, what I'm concerned about is locking in the values here for the shadowed portions of his face. And then later on, as I get deeper and deeper values here, I can start addressing this. Now, I will add some glazes to the highlight portion of his face too, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, we want to look at the shadows first and establish that. That's the most important thing. Well, with all my talking, I think I just missed a little spot on his face that I need to address. And I think because I've been talking so much, it's probably dry by now. But right here, I just missed this little spot right by his cheek. There's a dark value there. You can see in the reference photo. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you should be able to see that. So right here, there's a shadow that we want to establish right there. And let's see. And actually, we want to get this little shadow on his accessory jugal fold, which is this line right here. That would be this. This is called the accessory jugal fold. We want to get that in. And then we have the nasolabial fold up here by his mouth, and that's what we also call the laugh line. And I'm just going to add a little bit of a glaze to that. So we're just going to establish that accessory jugal fold. Notice how I'm using the end of my brush, just the corner, to get a good firm line. These flat edge brushes are so versatile. I love them. I mean, you can go and do some large areas with them, having the brush at more of a angle that's parallel with the canvas. But then you can also hold them like this, and you can do lines that are, you know, sharp, very sharp. You can get very sharp edges with them. And the less switching you have to do with your brushes, the better. It kind of creates a better flow as you're painting, rather than looking for your round brush and, you know, using so many different brushes. So I try to keep with one brush as much as I can. All right. So again, because I'm kind of talking so much, I'm just missing a couple spots, but that's okay. I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to fill in this area under his mouth. See that shadow that comes down all the way from his nose, over his mustache, and then past his mouth. We want to get that. Also a little bit right here under his mustache. I'm gonna just look for a moment, see if I missed anything. Right here, got that shadow coming from his collar. Do you guys see that right there? We want to get that darkened in. And I know, like, we're not covering a lot of ground in a sense. You know, it seems like this process is going very slow, but stick with me here as we get towards the last few lessons. It's going to really take off, and you guys will be amazed at what you create. So let's add a little glaze. I'm going to soften this up, or I'm going to lighten this glaze by adding a little more matte medium, making it more clear, more translucent, more semi-transparent, however you want to put it. And I'm going to add a little bit of a glaze right there, this tiny shadow under his lip. That's actually a little dark. I'm going to soften that, I'm going to soften that with my fingers. And yeah, so I think I'm happy with this glaze right now. That takes us up then to one layer. And where are we at with time? I'll maybe paint for another 10-15 minutes or so. So right now I'm gonna do the background. That'll be the next step. Whoops. So you always want to be moving around on your canvas. While one spot is set up, you know, you do the glaze, keep that wet edge, cover it in. Don't come back to it. Don't try to get the streaks out. If you've been brushing for a few minutes on it, and it starts to feel like, you know, it's streaking up, it's getting blotchy, just leave it alone. It's better just to leave it alone. And let it dry, and then work on another area, and you're always going to be cycling around. So while this whole area of his face is drying, I'm going to now work on the background. And then I don't have to worry about disturbing this. By the time I do the glaze on the background, I'll be ready for another glaze on his hat and his shirt. And then I'll go back to his face and I'll add more glazes to his face. So what we're doing is we're just kind of hopping around from place to place on the canvas. We don't want to leave any spots neglected. It's not like the usual way you paint, where you're doing everything in detail, detailed ear, detailed eyes, whatever, and you put in every nuance, and then you have white canvas staring you in the face. Nope, you're actually working everything. And again, just like a Polaroid photograph, it just kind of slowly fades in from that white print. You guys remember those. If you're my age, I'm 42, you remember Polaroids. If you're 42 or older, for sure. And you know, you took that picture and it was just this white print. It would come out, and then over the course of a minute, this photograph would just start to develop before your eyes. And it would start off very light. You wouldn't have like a complete face that was like all detailed. Then it would go to the shoulders, then it would go to the chest, then it would go to the body. No, it would be the entire picture, the background, the face, the chest, everything, all parts of this photograph would just kind of simultaneously develop, but it would be very light at first, and then it would start getting in higher contrast and higher contrast. So that's what we're gonna do here. Let's go to the background. I'm gonna take my flat edge brush. You want to rinse that off really, really good. I know you guys can't see that, but just show you quick, I've got this large container, large rinsing container. Anything you can find, milk jug or vitamin container, works well. Just cut the top off, it's perfect. Get a quick sip of water. Wipe off that brush, make sure there's no water left on it. Get it really dry. I have a towel attached to my pocket here, so I can just reach down at my waist level and grab this towel that's just kind of hanging out of my pocket. It works really well. So I have two towels. I have a towel by my water container, and then I have one right here. You can probably see it. Okay, so let's do the background. What's the color for the background? It's a little different than what's on the face. I use burnt sienna and raw umber dark because burnt sienna's got that kind of reddish orangish color that we want for the skin tone. but the background is not the same way. That's a cooler color, all right? It's kind of yellowish, kind of greenish, brownish. And so I'm going to pick, let's see, I'm gonna pick raw sienna as the base for this. So I'm gonna take just a little bit of raw sienna. Again, wiping it off here on the palette, bringing it into the matte medium slowly so I can really control that mixture. What's the ratio we're looking for on these initial glazes? 95% medium, 5% pigment. Okay, just a very, very small amount of pigment. You can see how I'm just pulling that away from the edge. So we're looking at making, let's see, raw sienna, and let's also take a little bit of raw umber dark. Okay, raw umber dark, so we're mixing that in there. But it still needs to get a little cool. So I'm going to add a little bit of Ultramarine Blue, because just in studying the color, I see it just needs to have a little more of a greenish cast. And so the Ultramarine Blue mixed with the raw sienna will make kind of a chromatically more muted green. We don't want to use Indian yellow. We don't want to use phthalo blue. It's just too chromatically intense. We don't want the green to be like green like you'd have on trees in early spring, like we're gonna have out here in Wisconsin in just a few weeks. I can't wait. It's been a long winter. But anyway, no, you wanna have something that's more muted, and you're gonna find it's gonna work a lot better. So here's the color I have. I'm gonna test it out. I'm gonna test it out, and I'm just gonna apply it. That might even be a little too yellowish. Let's pull a little more blue into the mix up here. Grab a little matte medium, bring it up over there. Just bring it up over by the mixture, but you can still see I have the very concentrated area of ultramarine blue away from the mixture. Notice I'm only pulling out what I need at any given time. And you'll get the knack for this. It will come. It's going to take a little bit to learn it, but once you do, you'll love it. So I just encourage you to stick with the process, and yeah, once you really get this technique down, it's going to be amazing what you'll be able to do with it. So now I'm just adding a few glazes, kind of addressing the tonal differences in the background. I'm studying the reference photo. I see this is darker up here at the top of his hat. And up here, I'm going to add another glaze on top of that initial glaze that I had. So the power of the glazing technique, it's the compounded effect. It's like compounding interest. You've got glazes on top of glazes on top of glazes, and eventually it gets darker and darker the more you add, but you're seeing this initial glaze underneath it because it's semi-transparent. And so now when I add this glaze on top of that kind of band of dark value, whatever that represents, maybe it's like part of a house or something, but as I add this on top, but I go past the initial line, I have the initial line right here, I'm going past it, and I'm painting over the whole thing. Well, now I'm getting the compound effect of both of those glazes together. As you add a third glaze, excuse me, I'm talking a little too fast here. As you add a third glaze, a fourth glaze, a fifth glaze, and so on, then you're going to add richness and depth. And you're not going to add these glazes all at the same time in every place. Some areas of the painting will just have a few. Some areas are going to have a lot because it's darker value. It's more detail that you need to imply. So his face is going to get a lot of glazes. The hat will get a lot of glazes because it's a very dark value. The background will not get as many glazes. I'm going to add this now to the lower portion, right by his chin, and then cutting up alongside his shirt. Just check the time here. Maybe paint for about 5-10 more minutes, and then we'll do questions and answers. I'm going to get a little more raw sienna on this side because I noticed the color is a bit more yellow. All right, so I'm just kind of shifting. I'm still keeping what I had on my brush, but I'm just pulling from the raw sienna over here, adding a little more matte medium so I have a lot on my palette. And you really want to load up a lot on your brush. It makes it so much easier to apply. When you have a lot of paint on your brush, just huge dollops, it'll flow a lot better. You can get it into the texture of the canvas very quickly, and then you can start to spread it out. Notice I'm using angled strokes in different directions to smooth it out. I'm working very rapidly, but back and forth, diagonal strokes. That's the way to blend it out. I'm cutting up along the edge of his face with firm pressure up to his hat, and I can go over the hat. I can go over the hat because the value's so dark, it's not going to matter. Where you don't want to go over your lines is where you have very light values and you want to preserve the luminosity of those light areas. But here, you can go over the hat, no big deal. No big deal. Yeah, I could even take this glaze and just kind of go over it, but I'm not going to waste the glaze on that. And I think I already did this area, so that might get a little blotchy if I overdo it. So I'll just leave that be. And there's a little spot right down here by his shoulder, and that's a little cooler in tone, so let's pull from the Ultramarine Blue. Let's pull from the Ultramarine Blue. And we'll just start to block that in. Now, I didn't sketch that in, so I have to make a choice where that line is. Don't put it right in the middle. You're gonna be tempted, I'll be tempted, we all are, to put it right in the middle. That's just human nature, because we always want everything to be symmetrical. We want to order everything in our universe, get our plates and our cups and everything in their spots in the kitchen cabinet. And we try to do the same things when we're painting. But here you notice, and you look at the reference photo, this little line, this little value, it's actually at about 2/3 between the distance of the top of his collar and then to this line representing the shadow here. So I don't want to put it right in the middle. I'm going to put it at that 2/3 mark, and I'm just going to try to block that. And you probably can hardly even see what I'm doing, it's so light, but you can at least see where my brush is going. Because it is very light, I want to start off very faint. Maybe a little higher. And it's at a slight angle too. It's not parallel with the canvas, it kind of is at an angle like this. All right, so where are we at here? We're at, about 20 minutes to the top of the hour. I just want to check my computer quick and see, can I see any of the comments on there? My computer went to sleep. Maybe I'll just do it for my phone here. How are you guys doing? You guys like this lesson? Is it helping? Is it making sense? I'm going to dive into some questions really quick because I want to make sure I have time to answer all of your questions. So the camera's going to shake as I pull this off. And let's see, let's switch this around. There we are. Now I can see you guys. Okay, thanks for those emojis. What do you guys think of this lesson? Did you like it? Give me a thumbs up. Let me know if it was good, if it made sense. And do you have any questions? Now is the time to put in some questions here. I'm just scrolling to see if we have any questions. All right, I see how it works. I'm just going to first say hello. Hello, Mary. Hello, Judy. Godfrey, good to see you. Sorry, my hand is just kind of popping forward here with an iPhone. Patty's online. Masonette, Arthur, good to see you. Arthur from Liverpool, over in the UK. Emily, good to see you. Marte, Rita, Emily, Sherry, Les, Suzanne, Belita, Deb, Christina. Now, Christina looks like she has a question. So let's see if I can enlarge this. Okay, Christina says, thank you for being so thorough with your instruction. I need to hear the basics so I can get started. I am awaiting my order of supplies to come before I can start the challenge. I hope not to be too far behind. Yeah, so just paint with what you have, and if you really don't have enough to do this class, like you hardly have any paints or brushes on hand, then yeah, wait, because the recordings will be available, and I'll just have them up there. You guys can access them later. So Want to give you guys value in that sense that, you know, these lessons aren't something that are just going to disappear. In the emails where I sent you your lessons, if you save your emails, you can go back anytime and watch those lessons. All right, so no worries. All right, Joyce is online. Nice to see you, Joyce. Litsa, Valentine, Dana, good to see you. Marguerite has a question. All right, Marguerite says, instead of Liquitex matte medium, can I also use matte acrylic medium from the brand Amsterdam All Acrylics? Marguerite, I apologize. I don't have experience with Amsterdam's brand. I've used Liquitex, I've used Nova Color, and I think Winsor & Newton. I haven't used any other brands, to be honest. Maybe I need to buy some just so I can have the knowledge and advise you guys more clearly. I would say try it out. I think Amsterdam is a good brand, but again, I haven't used them. You want to stay away from craft paints, okay, like Apple Barrel Color. They're for craft projects. Stay away from student grade paint, like Dick Blick has a student grade paint. Dick Blick is a great supply shop for artists, you know, online, but their student grade paint is terrible. It just is. It's good for students learning to paint, but I used it back in high school. I almost gave up on acrylics because of that paint. I would get water on my canvas and the pigment would literally wash off. You know, the resin, the binder that holds the pigment together with student grade paint and craft paints is so poor quality that the pigment will wash off, the colors will fade, they'll crack. Just stay away from it. The pigments are terrible, they're muddy. So Liquitex is a good brand. Nova Color, which I like to use, that's my preferred brand. I think Golden is good from what I've heard from other artists. And Winsor & Newton, I believe, is good as well. And Amsterdam might be good too. So just make sure, do a test canvas, put a little water on it. If the pigment doesn't wash off, it should be good. All right. Natasha, good to see you. Judy says, my streaming keeps pausing, but I'll try to keep up. We'll watch recording later. Yeah, and I have a recording of this as well with my camcorder. So we'll be able to access that as well. I'm going to somehow make that available one way or another, either available on my blog or later at Realistic Acrylic Portrait School. But for sure, I'll have this Facebook recording available for you guys. So, all right. Mary says eyes too. I'm not sure what that's in regards to, Mary. If you want to clarify that question, then I can answer that more fully. D says, you answered my question. Yay. Awesome, D. Marte says, looks great. Thank you. Let's see. Sherry says, any matte medium for acrylics will be fine. Yeah, as long as it's not student grade, it'll be fine. Exactly. Andy's watching. Good to see you, Andy. Marcel. And Sherry, by the way, thank you for helping out and answering these questions too. It's awesome. Andy Jacobs says, glaze and matte medium are two different things. Yeah, so glaze medium is, I believe, a little more tacky, not quite the same consistency, and it has more of a glossy finish. But I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of experience with glaze medium. It's just basically from what I've heard from other artists. So if any of you have experience using glaze medium, you want to answer Andy, that would be great. Honestly, when I learned how to do this acrylic glazing technique when I was in high school from a college art instructor, he taught me the right way. He said, get Liquitex, get these particular paints. They're the same basic palette I use today is what he advised me to use. And he said use matte medium, and so I stuck with matte medium all these years. So since he set me up with the right stuff right away, I haven't had a lot of experience using different things. But from what I've heard from other artists, glazing medium is going to be a little different in consistency. Now, I have used gel medium. Stay away from that. It's too thick. It's too pasty. It could actually become a glue. That's not suitable for this technique. Unless maybe you water it down. I don't know. Maybe it would work. And then matte varnish. Matte varnish is what you use as a top coat for your paintings to give them a nice not semi-gloss, but a satin sheen. You can use that too for this if you have matte varnish. It just, the shininess of it makes it hard to see what you're painting after it dries. It'll reflect light from your room and your lighting, and matte medium is flat, so it doesn't reflect light, so there's less glare as you're trying to paint. Mary says hello from Illinois. Well, Mary, I'm just north of you in Wisconsin, so good to see you. Susanna says hello from southern Oklahoma. Good to see you, Susanna. Hope the weather is nice. Sure, it's a lot warmer down there than it is up here. Ellen Wilson says, I just realized looking at yours, my blue is much darker, though I use mostly medium. So, Ellen, that is a common thing that I'm hearing, and from teaching classes before. Yes, that does happen. It takes a little while before you really get the knack of using just a tiny bit of pigment. So I really try to show that in this lesson, how little you want to use and how you want to just grab a tiny bit with your brush just on the corner. If you get too much in your brush, wipe your brush off on a rag, but then get that matte medium in its own little pile, its own little dollop, and set your pigment up like I showed you guys, away from that matte medium, and then pull between the two, and then really lock in that mixture that way. All right, so that'll help you out, and it's going to take a while, but you'll get it. And even if it got too dark, no worries. Like I said, the value of his hat is very, very dark, so you'll be able to compensate, no problem with those. Godfrey says, the medium is the product you purchase. The glaze is just a thin coat of either paint or mixed with matte medium. You don't purchase it, you mix it as Filio is doing. Thank you, Godfrey, I appreciate that. Christina, yes, we can see you really well. Federica, hi from Italy, your work is great. Thank you, I appreciate that. Marte says matte medium. Yeah, I know, they must have named it after me. I'm gonna be famous. Brenda says, should I add black to my raw umber to make it dark, and how much? Yeah, you can add that later on, but early on in this part of the painting process you don't need to, because the raw umber is going to be dark enough. It'll be dark enough. Now as you get towards the later portions of your painting, you can add some black to it if you don't have raw umber dark, and I would say maybe about 20% black to the raw umber. You just kind of get a gauge for it. You just want to tint it a couple levels darker than what it is. So maybe about 20% black, 30% black. And hold it up to the palette guide. Print out that palette guide that I made for you and kind of hold it up to that. I know it won't be an exact match because, depends on how your printer prints it out. If you can open up that file with a Kindle or an iPhone or an iPad or some sort of a tablet or on your computer, that should be a more accurate gauge. And then hold up, make a swatch on a little piece of cardboard or paper and hold it up to the raw umber dark swatch that I have on that palette layout guide. And that is in your welcome kit, by the way. And then test it that way. Keep in mind too, it's going to dry a little darker, so you might want to let it dry first. But hope that helps, Brenda. Tanya's watching. Good to see you. Liane says, I thought his shirt was light blue. I thought his shirt was light blue. Yeah, it is. It is. So we're starting off very light, just using a little bit of ultramarine blue. But even though it is light blue, it appears to be white. And actually, when I look at it, no, I'm gonna say it's not light blue. Now I don't know. I could ask the person that gave us this photograph for the challenge. I think it's actually white. I think it's white, and what you're seeing is the blue from the sky. So that's something we have to keep in mind is the shadows. The shadows pick up the color of whatever's around it. And when somebody's outside, you have the sunlight, and that kind of gives them a warm light. But then whatever is not illuminated by the sun that's in shadow, the blue sky above will reflect onto that shadowed area, and it'll make it blue. If you have snow where you live in the winter, You look at any of the shadows on the snow and you have a clear blue day, the shadows are blue. Or look at photographs online of snow, any shadows are always blue. And it's the same thing with the white shirt. So yeah, the shirt actually I believe is white and the shadows are blue. Hope that helps. Marte, this method really takes advantage of the properties of acrylic. Yes, I'm glad you get that, because acrylic dries really fast, and a lot of artists, try to make acrylic like oils in the sense of adding these retardant mediums. And I don't like to use retardant mediums because it still doesn't dry as slow as oil. So it's frustrating to have the layers kind of tacky and you can't add more to them, but it doesn't stay wet as long as oils do, so you really can't keep blending it. Rather, with this technique, we're using the fast drying properties of acrylic and taking advantage of them. Exactly, Marte. Awesome. Marte says, I would do more of the Grizz Eye stage. I'm going to get some water really quick, just a second. Just a second, I gotta... All right, I don't want to lose my voice here. Yeah, so Grizz Eye would be more of that black and white kind of monochromatic approach. And I don't do that with the glazing technique. I do pay attention to the colors and the values at the same time, but I simplify the colors. So I try to switch between warm and cool. All right, so we have the cool values, as you see here on his hat. We have the warmer values on the skin tones of the face, and also the cool values, in the shadows on his shirt. So basically I used what? Just a few colors to start with. We keep it very, very simple. As we get further and further along, we're going to add more colors. But I know some people like to do a Grizz Eye. They would do the whole painting in black and white, monochromatic, and then add color on top. But what you lose in that process is you lose the luminosity of acrylics with the glazing technique. With the glazing technique, the light shines through all those layers and it gives the painting a richness and a depth. The light shines through the layers, reflects off the white of the canvas, and then it reflects back to you. Okay, the light goes through those layers back to your eye and it just enriches the color. So if you do a monochromatic black and white Grizz Eye underneath and then glaze on top, you're never going to have that effect then of the light shining through those layers. Because if you have a face that's gray, you're going to have to add a lot of opaque layers to switch that gray into something warmer. And I'm not saying that Grizz Eye is a terrible technique. Some people use it very, very well. But for this technique and getting the luminosity, the richness, and the depth, this is the way we go. And I think it's less work. You don't have to do that underpainting in black and white and then try to add color. You're adding color the whole time, and that simplifies the process, and it gives you a richer painting as well. Marte says, you're doing great, Matt. Thank you. Sherry replying to Andy, matte medium thins the paint to make a glaze. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Deer is watching. Nice to see you, Sherry. Replied to Brenda. I'm not sure what that's in regards to, but that's all right. And Libby says, I'm going to try to order some matte medium, but in the meantime, I presume I should just be using water to thin the paint and make a glaze. Yeah, if you don't have matte medium, you could use water. It's not going to give you the same results. Not going to lie, I wish I could say it would, but it's going to cause a lot of rough texture on your canvas, because the medium, matte medium, is basically acrylic resin without pigment. So it's the same thing that's in your paints, but there's no pigment added. So it's an acrylic polymer resin. Once the water evaporates, the little molecules of polymer start to constrict as the water leaves that suspension of mixture of molecules, and then it compacts and it creates kind of a plastic film, and that's what you're left with on your canvas. That's the paint that we see. But with matte medium, it's just that polymer resin, no pigment added. And so when you mix the pigment with that polymer resin, what you're getting is all of that pigment dispersed evenly through the medium. Okay, and it starts to create its own kind of mix of paint, a translucent paint. But now if you take that pigment, that paint that you have, and you add it just to straight water, you're not having the dispersal effect of the pigment molecules binding to the resin. Instead, it's being dispersed amongst water, and so it's going to start pooling in the little grooves of your canvas, and it's going to look rough. It might potentially drip, and it's going to be a weaker bond, so potentially the paint could crack. It shouldn't if you have a really high quality paint, but there's just the potentials there. But use what you have. If you see this project as a practice, then use what you have, and you know, when you're able to get matte medium down the road, get matte medium. So just see this as a practice piece. Learn the technique, learn the other aspects of the values and the shading and the color and the form, and the smoothness part, you can dial that in later when you get the matte medium. All right. So thank you so much for your kind words. Donna says, this is already looking so good. Thank you, Donna. Harvey, hi, all retired from Palm Springs. All right, good to see you, Harvey. Raymonita's watching, good to see you. Patty says, I tend to make my highlighted areas look too dark. Is there a way to correct it and make it look highlighted again? So yeah, so you can come back in, Patty, with a mixture of some opaque paint, and eventually we will be using opaque layers on certain spots of the painting. They'll still be semi-opaque, we'll be adding some matte medium to it, but they won't be quite as transparent or translucent as what we have now. So if you want to add highlighted areas, it's probably good to do that later in the painting process. Unless you really made it too dark right off the bat. But if it's just a little bit dark, we're going to come back in and we're going to add some opaque layers to the highlighted portions of his face as well, to give the painting a little more of a rich, substantial feel to it, and to just kind of iron out some of the things that we can't address with the glazing technique by itself. All right, so even though we're doing this with the glazing technique, don't let the glazing technique be a constraint. Let it be an asset. So in other words, if you want to add some areas that are opaque, it's fine. You can do that. If you want to add some lighter values with opaque white mixed with some other colors, you can do that. But the glazing technique is meant to help us out and to give us richness and depth. I'll address that later as we get further along. All right, Jennifer's watching. Good to see you. Godfrey to Patty. Water will thin the acrylic polymers. Matte medium contains the polymers, so it thins without weakening the acrylic paint. Very, very succinctly said. Thank you, Godfrey. Martha, hello from Uranscroll, Vonardsdorp, Western Cape, South Africa. Sorry, a little difficulty pronouncing that, but good to see you, Martha. Libby says, are you going to add in the corner of the room behind him? I did not include that, but I see the ultramarine glaze. Let's see here. On your painting in the areas that look like corners of the ceiling of the room. Well, that was my timer just to keep me on track. I'm kind of at the top of the hour. We'll go over just a little bit if you guys still have questions, though. I'm just trying to keep myself on pace. Okay, are you gonna paint add in the corner of the room behind him? Let's see what we're talking about here. Well, you can't see that. I'd have to switch this around. So are you talking about this up here? Yeah, I did add a little bit of the color, but it's going to happen later. Basically, we're going very, very light at first, so everything is as it should be right now, but we'll be adding more colors, more layers later on. So, okay, I see what you're saying. So you thought we were just going to do a neutral colored background and not actually have the detail. No, I'm going to show you guys how to paint this as much as possible like the photo, because the thing to keep in mind is you want to make the background germane to the environment that the person is in. In other words, if a person is outside and they have sunlight on them, you don't want to put them in an environment that looks like they're in a portrait studio, because the lighting won't match. Portrait studio light is very soft and subdued, but obviously this guy here is outside in sunlight. He's got these harsh shadows on his face from his hat, and there's no getting around that. So if we put him with that neutral background, it's just not going to quite coalesce. I like the painting to look as real as possible, almost like, you know, it's a photograph as much as we can. And so since he's outside and he in his natural environment, I think this is a wedding photo cropped in. I would include all of those blurry details. Now, if the background was too detailed and we had a lot of distracting elements, and it was very much in focus, then I would either blur it or omit some of those details. But honestly, I think it's nice. I mean, you have a couple angles that create a really pleasing composition. They draw your eye into it. Everything's blurry. The area by the highlight portion of his face is darker in value, so it gives a really good contrast. The area behind the shadowed portion of his head, you know, by his ear and his neck, is very light. So again, it supplies really good contrast. So no, I'm going to keep it just as it is. What you guys want to do is up to you. This is how I'm going to demonstrate it, and it's up to you how closely you want to follow along. So, all right, Sherry says, some artists do things that way. I've tried that, but this is better for me. She's replying to Marte, so I'm not sure what that's in regards to. One thing to remember is these layers built on each other are transparent, so you want as little white as possible to allow light to go through the layers. That is correct. So yeah, so in these initial layers, you don't want to be adding white to it. We'll do that later. But yeah, right now, we'll keep the white away. So save it for later. All right, thanks, Sherry. Thanks for clarifying that. Marte says, thanks for covering the care of the brushes because acrylic is really hard on brushes. Yes, so Marte, I wish I could say I was an expert at caring for my brushes. I'm really kind of abusive to my brushes. I'm sorry. I do try to do the best I can, but this technique does kind of get a lot of paint into the heel of your brush. As you're making the glazes, it just, you know, you're putting such big dollops of paint on there. You're using the brush to mix the paint. I know some people use a palette knife. I don't care to use a palette knife. I like to mix with the brush, and that does add a lot of paint. It gets into the heel of the brush, the ferrule, the metal part of the brush. And unfortunately, it's hard to get that out. So I use very cheap brushes for most of my painting. I save my more expensive brushes towards the end of the process for smoothing things out. But I buy these cheap multi-packs of brushes for like $15 for a set, and that's how I roll. But you do want to keep your brush in a container of water, rinse it out really well. So even though this technique is abusive to brushes, you don't want to wear them out any faster than you have to. So I clean mine out with soap and water very thoroughly at the end, and I found just regular soap and water works the best. But always keep your brushes in a rinsing container. Don't let them sit out and dry. All right, Margaret says, do you also get frustrated with your paintings too? Let's see, like you just can't get it accurate? Since you are such a professional artist, Matt Filio, do you still have moments where you feel like you failed your painting? Or does that totally go away with experience? That is a great question. Great question, Marguerite. Thank you. Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I do. I still get frustrated with my paintings. I don't always get them accurate. I guess the difference is because I've done so many paintings. Excuse me, I just got to hold this differently. Because I have so many paintings and I really have a trust and a faith in God that He'll help me to finish them well. I know, like I just know, even in the moment where I'm like, oh, this is not looking good, I'm going to get this to work out. For example, I was doing a portrait of my pastor for his 80th birthday. That was several years ago. And my wife walked up into my studio, and while I was in the process, it did not look like them. I mean, the likeness, I had these crazy values, and this was before I really refined the glazing technique. I had some really dark shadows in certain spots of the face, and my wife looked at it and she said, I don't know if you're going to be able to pull this one off, Matt. And I'm like, thank you so much for the encouragement. And she can say that to me because she knows I'll be able to pull it off. But I was actually wondering there, I wonder if I'll be able to pull this off. And my wife is a huge support. She's the one that stuck with me here when my portrait painting business was not doing so well, and we had to pray in rent money. I mean, we literally had to pray for rent money. And she said, you do what God has called you to do. Don't go back to just getting a regular job. So my wife, I'm just going to say hats off to her. She is a great encouragement to me. But her personality, she's just like that. She's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to pull this one off, Matt. And I wondered if I was able to do it. It took some diligence and just this ability, or I should say a desire to finish the painting. So basically, if you have a painting that's making you get frustrated, you don't want to just throw it away. Okay, you might need to, stop your work session for a little bit, walk away, do something else, come back to it the next day with a fresh set of eyes. And, you know that you're going to be able to finish it well because you've got that reference photo next to you. And if you put in enough time and enough patience, enough effort, it's going to work out. And that painting ended up being one of my best. I just kept adding layer upon layer. And then pretty soon it got to a place where I'm like, I'm liking it. It's starting to look good. And then you start getting more motivated, right? And you're like, oh, this is looking really good. And then you just start working like hours on end straight. And it ended up being really good. But I've had paintings I've done for clients where the client didn't like the painting. They're like, something's off. You didn't capture the likeness, his mouth, eyes aren't right. And man, that is very disheartening. When you put in that time and you're counting on getting paid from the client and they don't really like it, and you thought, man, I thought this was pretty good. Like, okay, it's not my best work, but I thought it was good. And then I had to go back to my easel and say, God, what did I miss here? And just say, you know what? I didn't pray enough while I was painting. I was trying to do this in my own strength without asking you for help. Forgive me. Show me what I missed. And that happened, and I prayed. And after I prayed, I'm like, oh, I can't believe it. I missed this. His eyes are more angled here. The nose is wider. And, I just started adding these different things, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh man, I dialed in that likeness. It looks just like him. And I sent it back to the client, and she's like, yeah, you nailed it. That's him. That's him. So just to answer your question, I have been frustrated, but I don't like to give up. If I put time in my paintings, I don't like to throw them away because that's wasted time. Very, very rarely do I ever start over on a painting. Okay, I just like to put in the time, finish them up. All right, I'm going to grab more water really quick and get to the rest of your questions. And I got to spray my palette. Almost forgot I didn't put my palette away, and I don't want these paints to dry out, so I'm just going to spray them really quick. I'll show you guys that. Just spray that palette with a mister like this. Just a little spray bottle. You can get these from a dollar store or Hobby Lobby inexpensively. Just really keep your paints nice and wet. And then I put it into a container, a big plastic kind of Sterilite storage container when I'm done. Okay, Patty. Patty has a question. Reply to Godfrey. Okay. Godfrey, I do use matte medium, but probably too much paint and then can't get it nicely highlighted. Again, trying to fix my mistake. Yeah, and you'll be able to do that because we're starting off light enough that you'll be able to overcome any mistakes here. Unless you really, really went just full bore and you took the paint without diluting it at all with matte medium, then you might have a little more of a challenge on your hands. But I think most of you might look at it and think, oh, I went too dark. How am I going to be able to fix it? But don't worry, you didn't go too dark. You went darker than you should have, but you'll be able to remedy it. It's not a problem. Jennifer, question. She says, hi, is it normal to leave pieces of your brushes behind on the canvas? Does that mean my brushes are cheap? And it also seems to really drag across the canvas, not smooth like when I was adding the white yesterday over the grid lines. It took a lot of white titanium. Yeah, so Jennifer, you want to make sure you're using synthetic bristle or sable, white nylon, or golden Taklon, white nylon or golden Taklon. That's what you want to use. And I'm just going to switch hands here. So you might be leaving bristles behind if they're really cheap brushes. I have a couple. Okay, I'm going to show you one right here. This guy right here. This is a Craft Smart brush. Came in a multi-pack, like 10 bucks, and you got, I don't know, like 5 brushes. So very cheap brush. It has the right kind of bristle, golden Taklon. So it's a soft bristle. You don't want to use a China bristle. That will not work. That will drag across your paint. It's too stiff. The bristles need to be very soft. However, this particular brush, it does leave bristles behind because it's just a cheap brush. They don't manufacture them as well. So you just have to pull those bristles out. Sometimes you can grab a little razor blade, toothpick, or a brush that's small, and you can pull them off without messing up your paint. It happens to me too, so. But always make sure to use synthetic brushes. Thanks for that like there. Okay, Margaret says I'm struggling with that too. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Godfrey says that is the difference between wet on dry and wet on wet. Yeah, exactly. So if you do this technique properly and you're not over brushing when the paint's beginning to set up and get tacky, you shouldn't have the bristles dragging as much either. So very good point, Godfrey. Thank you. Libby says, I hate when brushes do that. I do think you need to get rid of all those brushes that shed, but we'll let Matt answer this. So yeah, if you can afford buying really good brushes, do it. But if you can't, I'm getting to a point where I can start affording some better brushes, but for a long time I couldn't. And I just had a few really good ones and a lot of cheap ones, and I just would have to contend with pulling out those bristles. But if it's in your budget, you can get some good brushes, do it. I have really nice large brushes for varnishing, and I try to use those just for that purpose, because in varnishing, you don't want to have bristles coming out. That's the worst time to have bristles coming out. You got to have a high quality varnish brush for sure. All right, Godfrey says that's why he missed. Yes, keep that paint nice and wet. Makes it so much easier to brush. Margie's online. Anita's online. Nice to see you. Margie says, I'm late. I didn't get a notice. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Margie. I sent out 2 emails, so I don't know why you wouldn't have received one. But anyway, well, you're getting the tail end of it, and it will be recorded as well. Libby says, love it, doing great, thank you. Mary, thumbs up, thank you. Susanna, yes. Kathy, thumbs up, thank you. Dee, yes, great lesson. Linda says, yes, great. Christy says, I love it, thanks. Can't wait to get started on mine, awesome. Jyoti says, it is helpful, great. Peter, my brother, love Pete over in Florida, and where it's nice and warm. Peter says, almost makes me want to pick up a paintbrush and give it a go. Hey, you should. Why not? Pete, yeah, I know you got art talent because I saw the stuff you did when we were younger. You could. I mean, why not? Thank you for that encouragement, Pete. I appreciate that. Hope you guys are well. Brenda says, thank you. Great so far. Thank you. And Sharon says, very good. Sharon says, thank you. I have a whole pages of notes to self. Awesome. Love it when people take notes. Della says, trying to stream on my TV, but I won't do it. Yeah, I'm not sure how to help you with the tech part of it, but we will have the recording, and I am going to upload this and make that available to you guys as well. Ellen says, this is great, Matt. Thank you for the Pyro Orange. Would a vermilion work? Vermilion. Yeah, that should. As long as it's kind of a red-orange, it should work just fine. Josephine says, thank you, Matt. Marguerite says, yes. Jyoti, very useful. Lawrence says, love the lessons. Thank you. Simone, great lesson. Della, love all this. I'm just trying to scroll through and make sure I didn't miss any questions. Tanya says, love it. Sherry, can you paint for another hour? Christy says, in other groups I'm in, people type questions in caps so you can see them better. Just a suggestion for you. Awesome. Thank you, Christy. Yeah, I'm still pretty new at doing these live videos like this, especially like doing a whole masterclass kind of thing. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Les says, great. Thanks for doing this. You're welcome, Les. Harvey, thank you for the smileys. Michelle said, I have had problems with matte medium being thick and sticky. Matte medium being thick and sticky, is that normal? Yeah, well, no, it's not normal. It shouldn't happen. Liquitex is a good brand. I don't think Golden's matte medium is as good. I think it's kind of sticky from what I've heard from other people. Liquitex and Nova Color are going to be your best bet. The other thing would be is if it's starting to dry and you're not keeping it wet, you got to spray that palette like every 15 minutes or so. So that should help you overcome that issue. And then make sure you're using good brands. Jeannie says, I'm soaking it all in. Thanks, Matt. You bet, Jeannie. Della says, do I need to paint in the background as it is? You don't need to. I would encourage you to follow and do this the way I'm teaching, just like I said earlier, because it's good to have a background like this where it puts him in an environment that makes sense for the lighting that's on his face. He's got sunlight on his face. If it looks like he has a portrait studio background, it's just gonna lessen the realism of the painting. But you can do this, Della, however you'd like. These are your paintings. All of you guys, I'm just here to help and encourage you. Whatever decision you make, I'm not gonna rip you for, I'm not gonna get upset at you for that. I'm just gonna encourage you and help you wherever you're at, whatever choices you've made on this. So you paint it however you'd like. I'm just gonna encourage you to do it this way for the reasons I just gave, all right? Christina says, wonderful, thank you for your answers. Linda says, compare the labels. Yep, thank you. Gwendolyn says, got in a little late. Hello, good to see you, Gwendolyn. Better late than never. Liane, couldn't get Indian yellow anywhere. I have Indian ochre, or yellow ochre, Naples yellow, and like a primary yellow. Can I mix with orange and approximate Indian yellow? Yeah, so you can use any kind of a yellow that's not canary yellow. It should be just slightly orange, but I think Naples would probably be your best bet. I think Naples would be your best bet to mimic Indian yellow. But if you added just a little bit of orange, it'd probably be better. So, yeah. All right, any more questions? Laura Lee, I would like to see you make a mistake and fix it. Well, I did make a mistake. Let me show you quick. Right here, I blocked this in, and I shouldn't have, so I had to come back in with the rag and remove that, you know, because I wanted to leave this area open for the cool reflected light on his jowls. And I painted the whole thing in and realized, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and I took my rag and wiped it away. So Laura Lee, that was my mistake. But there's always ways to remedy your mistakes. So you're going to see more. You're going to see more mistakes as I paint this. I guarantee it. But just like in life, we're going to overcome those mistakes, and we're going to finish it well. Marcel says, using Liquitex brand. Excuse me. Yep, Liquitex is a fantastic brand. Kaja says, how soon will you post the recording of this? I turned in late. So yeah, it's going to post here to Facebook. It'll be in the group like within, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so. So yeah, you'll be able to see it pretty soon. Jennifer says, and what do you suggest for archival quality paints, canvas, and brushes? Good questions. So yeah, for paints, Nova Color, Liquitex, canvas. If you want something archival, you might want to go with Fredericks, or Utrecht makes a good brand. Dick Blick, their Premier. You know, it's inexpensive, but it's a high quality Dick Blick Premier brand. Yeah, so I also, if you want to use linen, Belgian linen is a really high quality canvas. It's very expensive, but the paint flows on it very smoothly. So that would be another one to go with. You could use Utrecht brand or Dick Blick. Frederick, Belgian linen is really good. But this is cotton duck. This is standard. It's just like the kinds you would buy at your local art store. It's nothing super, but I wanted to use something that you guys would all have on hand. And this is just canvas you buy out of a multi-pack. You know, it's not super high quality, but it's good enough for this kind of a project. And as long as your canvas is straight, has tight corners, it's not buckled, it's good to paint on. Suzanne says, hi. Mary says, a skin tone glaze over the eyes and whites of eyes. I couldn't tell from the video if you were painting over them. All right. Yeah, so the skin tone, I didn't really go over his eyes. Oh, I see what you're saying. So yeah, the first glaze that I did, yeah, I went over everything because we're going to come back in and we're going to refine the values on the eyes. Eyes are not as white as what you think. When they're in shadow like that, the actual value of the eyes is more of a grayish blue. So we'll come back in and refine that later. So yeah, you can paint over his eyes completely. Just take that large brush, just like I showed, and paint over it. All right, I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I've got to get going. You can continue to write your questions here after the fact, and I'll come back later and answer them, you know, just typing answers in like the old-fashioned way. But I got to get going here. We're at 20 after, so 2 more questions. I'm going to get going. But if you have more questions, keep writing them in because this video will post, and we'll keep this dialogue going so I can make sure I answer all of your questions, okay? Kay says, hi Matt, is it okay to use a Stay Wet palette or will it water down the matte medium too much? Hope it's not a silly question. Yeah, so you can use a Stay Wet palette, but I prefer aluminum foil or wood or plastic. Stay Wet palettes, when I've used them, the paper kind of shreds over time, and then, you know, when you have your mixing area get all messed up and it's really muddy and just has too much paint on it, then you got to lift up that whole piece of paper, put down a fresh piece of paper, and you got to put down new paints again, so it tends to waste paint. But if you watched my previous lesson, lesson number 3, I showed you how I set up my aluminum foil system for the palette and how you can keep your paints there, and when your mixing area gets soiled and fouled up, you just pull off that piece of foil and put down a fresh piece of foil, and you don't have to then reapply all your paints again. Okay, so if you have a Stay Wet palette, that's all you've got, use it, but I would try the system I have or just a plastic or wooden palette. All right, so no, it's not a silly question. One more question. Rita says, my strokes keep drying out too quickly, so it looks blotchy, not smooth like color. Yeah, so again, you want to really keep that paint very wet, very fluid. You want to make sure that your matte medium, your paints are not tacky. Spray the matte medium, make sure it's the consistency of honey. And then you need to brush it very rapidly and keep that wet edge. Now, if you're like in a dry environment, like desert climate, it might be different. I've only painted in Wisconsin where it's still relatively humid, although right now during the winter I've had a wood heat being piped in. I have a wood furnace outside and it gets very, very dry with the wood heat, so my paints dry pretty quickly too, but still it shouldn't dry so fast that you can't overcome it. You just have to work the brush rapidly, keep a wet edge, and don't overwork it. Those would be the steps. Work rapidly, get a lot of paint on your brush, push it into the texture of the canvas, keep the wet edge, number 2, and number 3, don't overwork it. Once you get that down, don't keep brushing and brushing and brushing. Also, I guess a 4th tip would be to use diagonal strokes, and that smooths it out as well. All right, guys, I know you have more questions, but I got to get going here. It's a little over the time I set, quite a bit over, but that's okay. I've enjoyed being with you and doing this live lesson. If you have more questions, type them in. Excuse me, I will come back and check them and then answer your questions, like I said, in just the sidebar, just by typing my answers in. All right, so thank you so much for joining me live here in this masterclass lesson number 4, establishing your color and values. I hope again it was beneficial, starts clicking and making sense to you. And thank you so much for joining and all of your fantastic questions. Thank you for the effort you've been putting in painting. The sketches, the beginning processes looks just fantastic, and you guys are doing an amazing job. Just keep going with it, and I'll be doing some more lessons here to finish out the month. So hopefully next week I can put up a schedule of our remaining lessons, and I'm thinking probably 7 lessons, so maybe 3 more, possibly a 4th, and that'll bring us home. So All right, well, have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Again, thank you so much for joining. God bless you, and look forward to seeing you soon and seeing your excellent work in this group as it continues. All right, take care. Bye-bye.